Hello and welcome to the Legacy and Libations, where we talk about life, death, and the beverages that get us through it. My name is Bill Soroka. I'm the best-selling author of Sign and Thrive, How to Make Six Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent. And I'm here with my special co-host, John Braddock. Hey, John.
Hey, Bill, how are you doing, man?
Fantastic. What's good today?
I'll tell you what's good today. It's 80 degrees out in Arizona. The sun is shining. It's beautiful. Can't complain. And
Too hot.
since the weather is so unpredictable, tomorrow it's only supposed to be about 60 with 30-mile-an-hour winds. So who knows? But it doesn't matter because I live life one day at a time. I'm living for today. I'm living like today is the last and enjoying every moment of it.
Great philosophy. John, I just love your energy and I'm glad that we're here. If you are new to the Legacy and Libation show, let me just give you the rundown on how this is going to work. And then I'm going to let John introduce our special guest today. So first, we have a casual conversation about life and death, really life, death, and then maybe some of the beverages that get us through it. We're going to talk to a special estate planning attorney today about the perils of DIY estate planning, plus so much more. You're going to learn or hear the passion involved and the reason why Marjorie feels the way she does about this work. Then we're going to roll into a special training session about the My Life and Wishes platform, which John Braddock has created and that estate planning attorneys across the country use to help their clients protect their legacy. And then after that, we're going to end with a live Q&A where it's pretty much anything goes. You can ask any type of question that you might have. So let's get started. John?
Thank you, Bill. Welcome all. Marjorie, thank you so much for being here with us. I'd like to just take a moment and introduce Marjorie Desmond. There's a lot I can say about Marjorie, but I'll keep it very brief. She was motivated at a very early age to pursue an estate planning career as an attorney. I will let her tell you a little bit about that shortly. She grew up in San Diego, California, and she set forth to achieve that childhood dream of becoming a lawyer, where she attended Stanford University and graduated with high honors, and also moved on and received her law degree from Loyola Law School. She and her husband moved their family here to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I believe it was 1999. And she established her practice, Desmond Law, in May of 2015, in order to help families avoid the costly mistakes and protect their families after she witnessed a number of young parents die unexpectedly. So she's gone through a wealth of legal education, continues to expand her legal knowledge while helping her clients prepare and protect themselves and their families. She has offices in Scottsdale and in Tempe, which serve her clients. She lives in Scottsdale, has two children, I believe one in college and one either going to med school or planning to go. And she is licensed to practice law in both Arizona and California. So welcome, Marjorie.
Well, thank you so much, John, and thank you, Bill, for having me. You just happen to be talking about my favorite things. I love talking about these kinds of things, life and death. So not everyone's favorite topic of conversation, because it can be, difficult to think about, but I certainly believe in people having a plan, being prepared, and making sure that they've got things set up so that what they want to have happen happens.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Marjorie. I always ask this question of attorneys because, and I exaggerate a little bit, but there's about 300 areas of law that you could practice, right? Maybe not that many, but you're an estate planning attorney. And, I do what I do. I created My Life and Wishes and wrote my book, Click Here When I Die, all based on life experiences of what we dealt with, went through, and said, man, something has to change. So why not a criminal prosecutor or a personal injury attorney? Why an estate planning attorney?
Well, actually, so I've been an attorney for 31 years, and I have practiced a couple of other areas of law, and they were in the area of litigation. And basically, I realized that no one really likes to be sued, and no one really likes to have to sue someone. So the clients weren't happy. It was a very expensive process, and it was reactive. You basically, whatever bad thing had happened had already occurred, and now you were just kind of cleaning up the pieces. And so I really wanted to go into an area of law that would allow me to help people proactively prevent bad things from happening, to basically see their, goals realized before they had all gone poorly. So that's what drew me to estate planning, as well as protecting families and protecting family unity. And I just wanted to make sure that that I could really help people, and I love what I do.
Oh, that's awesome. And if I remember right, you had mentioned to me at one time something about a grandparent or something. What was
Yes.
that?
Well, okay, so my grandfather, and this makes me feel very old, but he actually died in World War II. And he was a doctor in World War II, so not someone, carrying a rifle on the front lines. So I'm sure he didn't plan or expect to not make it back, but he didn't. And he left my dad and uncle, without a father. My dad was 4 and my uncle was an infant and had never seen his father ever, because he was born while he was overseas. And he had left his death benefit. And I would like to say that he had maybe assigned that death benefit before he got married. But whatever the case, he left his death benefit to his father and his brother. Well, they really didn't help his widow and his children much. And when I was cleaning out my grandma's stuff, I found the probate paperwork for Texas, where my grandma applied to the court asking to receive that death benefit. And she was denied because he had very clearly stated it was to go to his father and his brother. So that's where it went.
Oh, wow.
So it was just poor planning on his part.
Wow.
Or old planning, right? Like he probably did
Yes.
that before he got married and then never updated it. Like how often do we do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And either way, it's like, Grandpa, really? But yes, I mean, poor planning can be old planning, which seemed like it made sense at the time, but your life changes and things in your plan need to change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The importance of updating, things such as beneficiary designations, things. I tell people all the time, they go through a divorce or something, and it's like, have you changed all your beneficiaries? Like, oh yeah, I took care of all that. How about your group life insurance? Have you gone to your employer? Have you changed that? And they're like, oh my God.
Nothing makes a second wife angrier than finding out that her deceased husband left an insurance policy to the first wife. So
Saw that on ID channel. Yeah.
and if the spouse had known that were the case prior to his passing would have come even quicker.
That's right. Oh,
That's a different show, John.
So let me ask this, Marjorie. So I talk to a lot of people. Obviously, as you know, I have, an estate plan. We have kids and a business and those kind of things. And it's pretty important stuff. And I talk to people a lot and I, say, hey, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Those kind of things, and the importance of those. And, some people are like, yeah, I should get around to it, but it's going to be expensive and blah, blah, the usual story. Right. And so I hear a lot of people say, well, I know there's a lot of free services that I can use. I can go online and go to freewill.com or, Rocket Lawyer, or, LegalZoom or somewhere. I get. And, I always say, look, I probably could do a little bit of work on the engine in my car, but it might not perform the way I expect it to. So, and I know that a lot of estate planning attorneys don't, it depends on what you need. If you need a simple will done, it's not going to be cost prohibitive. So can we talk today about, maybe some of the perils of online? And then if you do choose to do something online, why it would be so important that you at least have a professional review that?
Well, and I do understand the desire that people have to save some money, because we all want to get a deal or cut corners. But honestly, all of your loved ones and your entire lifetime wealth is not the place to cut corners, because that should be something you prioritize, and you want to make sure it's done right. I mean, maybe you can get some sale item, but it shouldn't be a sale on your estate planning just because it's so important. And it's not, I mean, if something happens to you, it is what it is. I mean, you can't fix it after you're gone. So a lot of times, people think it's kind of like going to, Dr. Google if you have some symptoms. I mean, maybe you might get a little information and get an idea about what it could be, but you never know. I mean, the symptoms might be anything ranging from, some horrible form of rare cancer to you have a cold. And it really takes a professional to kind of zero in on what your particular circumstances are. And that's really the same way I look at estate planning. No two families are alike, even though everyone might think they have a normal family or an abnormal family or whatever. But the relationships we have are all different. The people we have in our life may or may not be equipped to be a fiduciary and handle money, to handle life insurance proceeds, to handle children, cars, houses, stuff. I mean, it kind of depends where they're living, what their really area of sophistication is. And so it really takes a professional to kind of parse that out, to ask the questions that elicit the responses like, oh, yeah, maybe that isn't the best person. And, maybe I should think about, for example, hiring a professional to be the fiduciary for me. And it all comes down to not, you don't know what you don't know. And so people try to do things themselves and think they're, maybe saving themselves a little money. I had one trust administration. The gentleman had passed away. His successor trustee came in, and I looked at the trust. It was a beautiful trust. I recognized the software. I knew what the provisions were. And then he had decided that he wasn't going to go back to an attorney to amend it. He was just going to do it himself. So he typed it out, with a big font, and then he had it notarized and signed it. But the language he used was not legally sufficient to accomplish what he wanted. So when I told the successor trustee what this says legally is, XYZ will happen, she said, well, that's not what he intended. And at that point, he's gone, and that's too bad, because, it's either a fight in court to argue something else should be the, what happens, or we're just going to have something that he didn't intend have happen. So that's what happened.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
So let's say I do online planning, or worst case, I don't do any planning. And now I die. And so my family comes to you and says, what do we do? Right? Obviously, it's going to be probate. On average, how long does probate take?
Well, probate usually takes about 1.5 years. And during that time, assets are frozen in the probate until you have notified all creditors, published notice in the newspaper 3 weeks in a row in a newspaper of general circulation in the county in which the decedent lived. Then you've got to notify all creditors that you're aware of. They have an opportunity to come forward and say, this person owed me, X, Y, and Z. You hope, I mean, it's public, so there might be some fraudsters out there that you've got to, go through. Then you've got to prepare an inventory and an accounting, and it just takes, there are protections which are time limits, that make you delay doing certain stages. So that's why it takes so long. And the number of documents you have to prepare makes it pretty prohibitive to try to do it yourself. So it ends up being expensive and time consuming and public, because if you had documents, they're now going to be part of the public record. And if you didn't have documents, that is also going to be public. And everybody has an estate plan. It's either the plan they make for themselves or the plan that Uncle Sam makes for you.
Oh.
And so that may not be at all what you had intended.
Yeah, so important. And the reason I ask that is because I've talked to several people who have actually gone through the process of probate, and on average, from the ones I talked to, it's about 2 years and it's about $30,000. So my kind of canned discussion that I have with friends and people now is when I get talking, hey, do you have an estate plan? I'm like, I know I should do it, but I really don't want to spend that couple $1,000. And my response is, don't worry about it. Don't spend that couple grand. The family could spend 30 grand in 2 years in probate.
Well, it's interesting. The cost of probate varies a lot from state to state. Some states have statutory fees, which are a percentage of the estate, and that is true in California. Arizona does not, but it has, it's kind of whatever the attorney charges. I mean, for the amount of labor it's going to take them to get through that process. So, but it is lengthy and expensive and public. And I think it's much easier to just, seamlessly deal with the estate, which is how it would work if there had been some planning in place.
Yeah.
I suspect you'd rather do an estate plan for someone than do a probate for the decedent's
Oh,
family.
absolutely. Oh, the worst is when somebody has gone through the expense and time to put together an estate plan, and then they come to me, the person passes, the spouse passes away, the widow comes into my office with a trust and says, okay, this is my trust. I said, great. Okay, we got, some trust administration to do. So there's some things we got to do. And then find out that there's an asset that wasn't placed in the trust. So then we have a probate too. So, and that is really unfortunate, because then you have, two matters for that person. But
so the importance of, if you have an estate plan or a trust or even a will, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It needs to be reviewed and updated on a regular basis so that it functions as you would desire it to function when the time comes.
yeah, I mean, basically all the people in our lives, their lives change. And so maybe what you want for yourself and for them changes. So the provisions that you might have for a small child is, I want them to be with, my parents, and, I want my parents to raise them. But then as they age, maybe your parents aren't equipped to handle raising a teenager or chasing around a toddler. And then as your kids then become 18, now maybe you don't want an 18-year-old to inherit, your life insurance policy. Instead, you would want them to wait, and you might distribute funds out to them when they're 25, 30, and 35 to make sure they don't just blow it in one chunk. And so it really depends on what's going on in their lives. So it really isn't a once and done. It's kind of a static thing that we should take a look at. With all of my trust-based plans, I include a 3-year review and contact the clients 3 years later, have them come back in. How are things going? Sometimes it's an estranged child that they wrote out of their plan that they want to write back in, or the other way around. And, maybe they want to change the ages of distribution. Basically, where I am now, the kids are all turning, basically they're turning 25, 26, and we're kind of looking around going, I don't know that they are responsible enough to handle that first.
Let's add another 5 years.
Exactly. So people are like, well, maybe we'll make it 30, 35, 40, so it all just depends on what's going on in their life. And, God forbid that one of those beneficiaries has special needs or has an illness or has a drug problem or a terrible spouse that you don't want to have access to the money. You know, all these things can cause a difference in planning, and there are different things that we can do, different tools we can use to deal with those potential problems.
That's really powerful, Marjorie. And I love hearing this. And I have a question for you too, because I think I've seen the statistics. I know that most of the people on today's call, just because the stats, do not have an estate plan at all, right? That's there's an opportunity there, obviously, but there's also a reality. So what advice do you have to people who are on today's call shooting all over themselves because they know they should have an estate plan, but they haven't yet? Maybe they don't believe that they have assets enough to justify it, or maybe they just feel overwhelmed by it. What would be your advice for the first step?
Well, and first of all, and this is one thing that I make clear when I'm meeting with clients, you know, because generally, I mean, people generally don't know too much about estate planning. I mean, because they haven't encountered it, and maybe they don't encounter it until they're much older, and so they don't really know too much about it. There's two parts to estate planning. One is protecting yourself while you're alive. So even if you don't care what happens to your stuff after you're gone, you certainly should care what happens to you if you become incapacitated. And that could be, you know, as quick as a stroke. It could be, you know, walking across the street and you get hit by a car, or you have a car accident, or anything else. And it's that, you know, those aren't events that we plan or can anticipate. And so making sure you have powers of attorney in place to make sure the people that you want to act for you can, when you need it, is really kind of half of the picture. So that's just a really, really important thing. If you don't have those set up, the process is to go to court. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and is very expensive. So that's another place besides probate that also involves the court and also is expensive. So there's that, and then of course the estate planning part. So
yeah. So if there was somebody, like we have a question even in the chat right now of somebody who says what if there isn't much to leave or give? How do you, considering what you just said about incapacitation, which is extremely important, or just whatever it is that you have, what would be a first step for somebody? Is it booking an appointment with an attorney? Is it downloading the advance directive paperwork? What do you think people should do?
Well, I certainly encourage, there usually, well, I can't say usually, some states have medical powers of attorney written by the Attorney General's office that you can download, and where you can set up your own power of attorney. For example, on my website, I have a link to the Arizona downloadable medical power of attorney, and it includes a living will, which is a medical directive for what happens if you're in an irreversible coma, a persistent vegetative state, or the end of a very long illness, like you're in hospice and you're going to die soon. Do you want them to just keep you alive on life support forever, or do you want them to just let you go? So those documents are sometimes available. Those are not as complex, of course, as what happens to your stuff after you go. But if your assets are simple, sometimes you can take care of those assets by making sure that you've got beneficiary designations on your accounts. And some states also have a way of transferring property after your death to somebody for example, Arizona has a beneficiary deed where you record it, and it just says, you know, if I die, I'm giving my property to Sam. And then if a death certificate is recorded, then it just gets transferred into Sam's name. So there are simple ways to make sure that all your assets pass that aren't as formal as a more complicated, you know, trust-based estate plan. So it doesn't always have to be really expensive.
Do you do you have like is there a hard and fast rule to determine if somebody needs a trust or not?
Not really. It depends more on the type of assets they have rather than the amount of assets. Right now, the inheritance tax exclusion amount is very high. It's around $12 million. So if you have less than that most people do, quite a bit less than that, then taxes isn't so much the concern. The concern is just making sure it passes quickly and easily. So it's more the type of assets. If you have businesses, if you have more than one property, if you've got property in different states, that can involve multiple probates. So John, you're talking about probate. If you own, a guest, like let's say you have a cabin in Colorado or something, then that would be probates in multiple states, one for each property. So that can be very, very expensive. But if you have assets like that, where they're kind of a diverse set of assets, then that is something that lends itself more to a trust. So it really kind of depends on the types of assets than the dollar figure.
Does the fact that somebody has minors under or children under 18, does that play into your decision for a trust as well?
Absolutely. So if things pass under a beneficiary designation, once those kids turn 18, they get it. They get the life insurance proceeds. They get the 401k payments. They get the contents of your bank account if that was set up with a beneficiary. So most people who have 18-year-olds don't think that they have very good judgment. And I would definitely agree with that statement. And so a trust makes sure that it has the tools to adjust. So you can say, you know what, I'm going to make sure these kids go to school, and I will make sure that my trustee knows that they're supposed to pay for their school until they finish college or finish a vocational program and get a job, or whatever you want your trust to say. So you can make up your own qualifications for what your child would need to do in order to receive distributions. And then the trustee can use their judgment, like they can pay for usually health, education, maintenance, and support in any event. So even if you don't give the kid the money, you can still pay the tuition and pay their rent and make sure they have money for food and that kind of thing. So it's a pretty flexible arrangement that allows someone to essentially be you, and it allows you to kind of, rule things from the grave, so to speak. So
Ruled from the grave. I love it. John, I want to be respectful of Marjorie's time. I feel like I could sit here and talk to her all hours. Do you have any wrap up questions, or how we doing?
No, I think we're great. Obviously it's so important. And again, there is online things that are available that people could do inexpensively, but something that you download or do on the web can't really ask you all the right questions about who
Right.
you are, what you want, what do you want to have happen, and those kind of things. So I just think it's very important that people visit. I know that most estate planning attorneys will, have initial consultations to at least help you identify where things are, before sending you, a bill. Most estate planning attorneys don't charge by the hour. They have fixed pricing and fees for their different plans, so there's no surprises. So, and if you've downloaded something and done something on your own and you're just not sure, I would say have a professional, at least put eyes on it for you to make sure it does, what you think it would do. So
yeah, there's some pitfalls that people really don't think of. Like what I've seen is people add a family member to their real property, and that can cause very large tax consequences. And also, I had a client who mom added son to deed, and then son went through a divorce. Well, that property is now also son's. And so mom's property went through son's divorce. So, and that is true of liens on that property that can be put there due to judgments and debts held by the child. So it's just not a great planning tool.
Yeah.
That's stuff that we don't even think about, which is exactly why you pay for an expert or an advisor in these situations. I mean, there's just so many, you can be hit from so many different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And
There's a couple of quick questions here, and I'll just address them real quick, and Margie can help with it. Someone said, what's the difference between a trust and a will? In layman's terms, in my mind, they both do the same thing. They dictate really what's going to happen with your stuff. Okay, because estate is a fancy word just for stuff. So your estate plan, it dictates what's going to happen to it. The main or biggest difference that I see is a will is a public document, and a will still has to have the family go through probate. The trust is a private document, and the family should be able to avoid probate.
yes, absolutely true. And the whole point in making the will go through probate is so that the judicial system is making sure that that is the person's signature on the will, that they weren't, induced to sign it with a gun to their head, that they knew what they were signing at the time, that, no, like a caregiver wasn't tricking them into signing a will and sending, giving them everything. And so that's what the judge is for, is to make sure that those things are, fair. But that's one of the things that take so long too. So.
And one of the biggest perks of a trust too, Marjorie, is that it avoids probate, right?
Yes, yes.
It
And really, you can have the successor trustee just take over from one day to the next, even in cases of incapacity. So if you're unable to manage your own affairs, the trustee would take over your affairs, and they would have access to your accounts, and they can act on your behalf, but they are acting as a fiduciary for you. So the stuff doesn't go into their name. It goes into their name as trustee, and they're supposed to be acting on your behalf.
Another question is, would trust beneficiaries pay taxes on the assets passed on to them? Now, would that only if it exceeds that, whatever it is, $12 million threshold?
Yes. There is a difference between trust income. So where the trust, but basically, if the trust is paying out to a beneficiary money that has already been taxed. So, okay, so here's the difference. This is one of those things that people might not know. If you have an IRA, it's pre-tax money. It has not been taxed yet. And then when it starts paying out, if you have the trust as the beneficiary, the IRA may get taxed at the trust tax rate, and that's 40%. Instead, you want that money to go to a human with an actual life, so that the money would get taxed to the human. And so whether it's in a trust or not, that money goes to the beneficiary and gets taxed at the beneficiary's tax rate. If it's just, an asset that the deceased person owned, and it's just getting passed directly, as long as it's under $12 million, there's no inheritance tax. But if it were rental property, and the rental property was generating income, that income would come in, get distributed to the beneficiaries, and then it gets taxed to the beneficiaries as income, so they would get a K-1. Again, so it can be complicated, and that is something that you would want to check with a CPA about, to make sure that you understood what the taxes would be in your situation.
Great demonstration of how complicated it is and how important it is. Because can you imagine what happens when there is no plan? I mean, that sounds like a complete, pardon my French, but it's a show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And Marjorie, I want to respect your time. I really do. Are you okay on time? Do you have a time for a couple more questions before we get into the training portion?
Sure. Yep. If there are a couple more questions, I can squeeze a couple more in.
All right, we got two more questions. First, Peace asks, Donna asks, is it advisable to have your children as co-trustees while you are still alive?
Well, as I say with everything, it really depends on the people involved. I would say, I mean, I wouldn't want to do that unless you really, really trust your kids. And and it's not so much while you're alive, it's after you're gone. Unfortunately, people get greedy about money, and when you're gone, the gloves come off. There's no moderating influence, keeping the people sane and civil. A lot of times, to preserve family harmony and really prevent them from having to go through the burden of administering a trust, I recommend that they use a professional, and that keeps siblings from fighting. Unfortunately, and I'm sure all of you know at least one person who's lost a family relationship due to some accusation of, or maybe real misdeeds that happened due to a parent's death. And, my sister was a trustee and she stole all mom's money, or, I never got an accounting. I don't know what happened to it. She owes me money and she took it all. And unfortunately, those things happen because people just aren't professional trustees. They don't know what they're doing. So if you feel really comfortable having them do it, you can just, having your kids be your trustee while you're alive, you can have someone else take over once you're gone. So it just really depends on the people and the relationships involved.
If it was your client though, Marjorie, would you recommend co-trustees or just beneficiaries for children?
I would just, and I really don't like co-trustees because, first of all, banks don't like co-trustees. Banks don't want to be put into a position to decide, to police whether or not both signatures are there on the withdrawal or on the deposit or whatever else it is. And they don't want to be put in the position of making sure that everybody signed off on the transaction. So, and then keeping track of who's paying what bills and what's going on can be difficult. So I generally tend to just stick with a trustee, and they can associate in a professional if they need some help. And that tends to prevent a lot of arguments.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I know, Marjorie, that you are a client of John's too, with My Life and Wishes. And so is this part of your overall plan whenever you write up a trust?
We do offer it to our clients with our membership program. And it really is a great, I love the software because it basically, and we do an asset spreadsheet for each one of our clients. And it prevents John's, search, like Easter egg hunt, trying to find out, where the eggs are and where mom and dad hid them. Yeah. And just kind of keeping things easy and giving people access to online accounts and designating when they get that access. So like, for example, I would never give my kids access to my personal checking account, but if I were gone and my husband was gone, then I would. So I just think it's a great tool. I think it's a real value add for my clients and helping them keep their electronic life organized and their financial life organized. And they love having the documents uploaded, which we do for them on the software as well, so that they know that, they'll always have the most recent versions available.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect segue for John to roll us into the training portion. John, are you well positioned for that? And I will say too, that we have a few more questions rolling in, Marjorie. So if you'd love to hang out with us, we would love to have you. And I'll open it up to a live Q&A so we can answer the rest of these questions in just a few moments. John, what do you think?
Perfect. Yeah. Hey, am I ready? I'm always ready.
All right. Awesome. Marjorie, if you can hang out with us, we'd love to have you. No pressure though. I know you're busy.
Right. Well, we're going to keep it quick. we're going to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. And so, again, for those who have not yet started their My Life and Wishes account, I think Bill has already posted into the chat the link to log in where you can create your account and get started. It's a free trial. So you can try it out and work along with us. I'm going to log into the account that I created 3 weeks ago when we started this process. And last week, let's see, let's get that pop up out of here. So last week we talked about what's family going to need right away. And we talk about build a roadmap first. Don't get bogged down with the details. Just provide information to guide your family, right? And so the first things that we talked about, what's the first thing I need to know? Well, my funeral desires. Do I want to be buried or cremated, right? Because, hey, I don't talk about these things. And so we went into the end of life section and we started putting that stuff in. We said the next thing that we need to know is how are we going to pay for it? And so under the documents and account sections, if you recall, we went to insurance policies and we said, hey, just list life insurance you have. You don't have to get deep into it. Just add the policy, if it's a life policy, and put the name of the insurance company for now. You don't have to put anything else. I mean, your family knows how to use Google, right? So they can go ahead and go in there and find that information. The next thing we said is they're going to need to know who your advisor is. Your attorney, your estate planning attorney. So we included that person. And again, we don't have to get real deep into it. We can put, who are they? They're the attorney and put their name. Again, family knows how to use Google. But if you want, you can go back and you can put a little bit more information in there under your attorney. So their name, the name of their firm. This is what they do. Hey, it's my estate planning attorney. Contact him or her right away. You're going to need their help. They'll be able to help you with everything. And then the last thing we put in was, do you have a will or trust? Do you have an estate plan? And if so, go to the document section. And don't worry about uploading it yet, but just go to the document section. And I've already uploaded in my trial site for you. But go add a document. And list, if it's your will, put will, and just tell your family where it is. Where can we find it? It's in the lower left-hand desk drawer, 3 inches deep in the yellow file, and save it. So it's in there for them. So those are the things we really talked about and wanted to focus on last week is just make a roadmap, going through several steps. So 2 things I'll point out today, and then we'll talk about what we'll talk on next week. Number 1, has everyone started building their roadmap? Okay, I can't see and tell if you have, so I'm just going to believe that every one of you said, yes, I've started building my roadmap. If you're struggling with it, I know, we have 50 some people online, and I know a lot of you guys know each other through your networks. Seek somebody out as an accountability partner. Say, I shoulder tap Brian there and say, hey, Brian, will you be my accountability partner and I'll be yours? We'll just check in. I just send you a text message every other day. Hey, did you enter anything into your site today? I didn't yet, man. Well, I did, so you better catch up, right? So that way we get this stuff done. Make it a little easier to do it along with somebody. So today I'm going to touch on 2 things. Under your account settings. Oh, and by the way, if you look up top, it still says, I have 15 days left of my 30-day free trial. And if I want to upgrade that subscription, I can click here, or I can go into my account settings in the lower left. Again, in the middle of that, I can see I'm on a subscription. If I want to upgrade that, I can select that. I can choose, I want an annual plan. But again, remember, you're not going to pay $129. If you enter the code for my family and click apply, it's going to reduce your cost to $99, $30 off, and that's perpetual for the subscription. So do that if you haven't done that, especially once you start putting your information into the account. So back under account settings, two things I wanted to point out. I don't think we really touched on this yet. Who is a co-owner? Co-owner is typically your spouse or life partner, someone you want to have full access to this. If I go first, my wife Michelle does, and vice versa. In order to add them, it's very simple. Put in their first, last name, add their email address, and then choose a security question. You know, where did we meet? Where did we go on our honeymoon? What was the middle name of, our first child? And then type your answer. And then you select add the account, and it will immediately create more tabs in your platform. There'll be one for you, one for your co-owner, and one for shared. Now your co-owner will receive an email. In that email, it will say, hey, John has just invited you to be a co-owner on the account. Do you accept? You click the yes, it'll take you to a page that'll ask you that challenge question, which you should know. And you enter that and you select, and then you'll create your own login credentials, and then you'll have full access along with your co-owner. Okay. The other thing that many people do is you can add an authorized user. This is someone who I would want to have access if I didn't make it home to me. I can add them by putting their first and last name and their email address, but I have the ability to control what they can see and or edit within the platform. Now, Michelle and I have 6 grown children. None of them can edit anything, obviously. You don't want your children to edit your information, but if they need to be able to see this information, if I don't make it home, that would be important. But being the parent of 6 children, I know that children are curious, sometimes a bit nosy. So we built in a safety feature, if you will. So if my son, Nick, goes to log into my account as an authorized user, he'll get a pop-up that says, hey, Nick, you're about ready to access your dad's account. He will be notified immediately. Do you wish to continue? And then there's a bailout button for him. Like, nope, I'm not going there. If an authorized user does log into my account, I immediately get an email that says my account was just accessed by so-and-so, time and date stamped, and the IP address it came from. So I can pick the phone up, call Nick, say, hey, I'm not dead yet. Why are you in my account? And then I always have the ability to go in and change their permissions or delete them. So you have total control over your authorized users, and there's no limit to the number of authorized users that you can have. Okay, so those are 2 critical things, because obviously if we spend time to fill this out, we want someone to be able to have access to it when that time comes. All right, so today we're going to go into financial, or as I like to say, show me the money. So last week, we also touched on a couple of things in bank accounts, just to show you how easy it was to build a roadmap. We said, look, you don't need to worry about the branch address. You don't have to worry about your account number and stuff. Just let family know that, hey, I have a checking, savings, or other, it's a money market account, and put the name of the institution. That's a valuable roadmap, because I can tell you that estate planning attorneys, when they're hired by family because someone didn't have a plan or leave any information, now the attorney's office are reaching out to every financial institution within the geographic area to find out if the deceased person had any accounts there, and that costs you money. Well, it costs your family money because we're gone, right? So just build that roadmap, make it simple. But it's not just bank accounts. So think of bank accounts as anywhere you hide money. So my grandfather had a method. There's another kind of account. It's cash. And the name of the financial institution is a free-form area, so you can write anything you want there. Under the mattress. Save it. Boom.
John,
now my family's going to find that.
John, just in September, I had a friend of mine who passed away, but he had this exact same thing. We had just set this up for him too. He had his money hidden in one of his golf hats on his hat. And we literally put it in there where the money was hidden. I always teased him about it. I was like, what if the maid finds it or something? It's like, she's never going to touch it. And that's where he had a little wad of cash that he wanted to pass on to his son. And he put it right in his My Life and Wishes, just like that.
What's so funny about that is we had a call back in November from a user in Dallas, Texas, a guy named Gary. And so he gets passed to me. I talked to him because his question didn't make sense to our team. And he said, I don't know where to put some money. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, here's the deal. Every Tuesday, I go to the Tobacco Box. It's a cigar bar up in Rockwall. And me and my buddies get together at noon. We start playing poker, drinking Bloody Marys and smoking cigars. And we'll do that till midnight. Every week I come home, I bring my poker winnings and I put them in my brown jacket in the bedroom closet in the left-hand pocket. Judy has no idea it's there. If I die, she's just going in the closet, getting the clothes, put them in the box, off to Goodwill they go. And he said, John, I could have $7,000, $8,000. And I said, first of all, Gary, you're a much better poker player than I am.
No kidding. How do I get in on that?
So I said, here's what we're going to do, Gary. Log into your account. And I walked him through. I said, select account type, call it other, name it, poker winnings. And again, financial institution is free form, brown jacket, bedroom, closet. Left pocket. Save it.
If I saw that, you wouldn't even have to designate which pocket it was. I'm going through every brown jacket.
I go through every, right. And then I'm going through every other piece of clothing in the entire house because he might not put it in, right? So those are the things. The other thing I tell people is don't forget about your home safe. 2 reasons. You know, you add the account, again, call it other, call it a cash account, call it home safe. And then since all this is free form, just under financial institution address, type in your combination and location of the safe. So, you know, next to the steel case, filing cabinet in my office, combination is this. Does 2 things. Number 1, I'm getting a little older and a little bit forgetful. And so it'll make it easier for me to remember.
Right.
So I can look it up. Number 2 is if you don't leave that combination for family, they're going to spend $150 so they don't have to on a locksmith to come in and get into that to find out that I had nothing in there anyway. But so that's the thing about banks. Anywhere you have money, okay, it needs to be put in so that family can find that information. The last thing I'll mention on that is I had another guy, and this is interesting because as our parents get older, so, you know, I've created one of these for my parents who are in their 80s and older than I am and help them. And this is important because we're going to have to find their stuff. So I had a gentleman say to me, he said, did I ever tell you about my gold story? I said, gold? He said, yeah, my gold story. He said, well, look, after Dad died, and when Dad died, Mom was kind of not all there, just having some dementia and stuff. But we're getting ready to sell the house, or transitioning Mom into assisted living. And one day she's saying, well, did Dad tell you where the gold is? And he's like, what? Doesn't understand what she's talking about. Thinks he's just a little bit delusional. A couple of days later, she said something, well, when you get the house sold, don't forget about the gold that's buried in the basement. And again, he's thinking, yeah, right, Mom. Okay, yeah, Dad was a pirate, right? And he buried the gold in the basement. After she had mentioned it the 3rd time, he thought, she ain't all there, but she's pretty insistent on this gold story. He went into the basement and started really digging around. And underneath some boards, his dad actually had a box of gold coins buried in the basement. that if it wasn't for her mom or his mom being a little bit in and out of dementia, would have never found that. Lucky
Yeah,
new owners of the house.
Yeah, that would have been one of those stories you hear 50 years down the road where they find gold in a house they've been renovating. John, Marjorie, I think has to go. And I just want to say thank you so much, Marjorie, for being here. We really appreciate you sharing your passion for this industry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think it's a great podcast or Zoom call you guys have. And I obviously am very supportive of the software that John has, because it's really helpful to my clients too. So I really enjoyed being on, and thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Of course. And if anyone has questions for Marjorie, I think we've already put her
Yes.
website in the address. You can reach out to her through there to ask any questions.
She is licensed in Arizona and California. So if you're looking for a great estate planning attorney, reach out to Marjorie. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thanks, Marjorie. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. So my simple tip is, get in, list anywhere where you have the money. Okay. Same applies in this section. Don't get overwhelmed with all the other sections. Just this week, go into your bank accounts or anywhere you're hiding money. Maybe go into your loans section and add any loans that you have. I mean, we have loans, right? And family are going to need to know about what those loans are, and because they're going to have to get settled one way or the other, right? And so when you select your add a loan, you'll be able to go ahead and enter what kind of a loan it is and who the loan is to. So it might be your mortgage company, it might be auto financing and those kind of things. The other things that you could also do, indicate your credit cards. I mean, you know what credit cards you have. We always tell families when someone dies, cancel all the credit cards immediately. The reason is all the things that we have set up on auto pay and recurring pay. Okay, we can't cancel the credit cards unless we know what they are. So just list them. I have a MasterCard, I have the Target Red card, I have this, if you want to provide more detail with the card number and those things, that makes it easier. And same for your investments. And I'm going to stop there for this week, but it's the importance of just doing a little bit each week and building that roadmap. And there's two reasons why I think it's so critically important. And, obviously, number one is I don't know if I'm going to make it home tonight or not. Certainly hope I do. And I certainly hope I'm around for a long, long time. The other one is, as we're all dreadfully aware, in Rolling Forks, Mississippi, this past week, they had that terrible tornado. And over 315 structures were totally demolished. At least 50% of those were homes. These people have lost everything in its physical format. Copies of their wedding certificates, marriage licenses, birth certificates of their children, planning documents, everything. And if those people had their lives digitized and stored in one location, it would certainly make that rebuilding process maybe just a little bit easier. Tornadoes happen. We all know that earthquakes happen, and the wildfires and the hurricanes happens every year, and people lose stuff. So it's just another, good reminder that we can be doing this for ourselves to protect our things now and protect our family, as we go forward.
That's a really good point, John. Like we're sitting here thinking about impending death and incapacitation and comas and stuff, but there's other things that could sideswipe us in life, and having a platform like this is so important. And I think Susan asked a great question. I know you love talking about this, so I want you to talk about this again, is how is this safe from other online security issues?
Yeah, great question. So we utilize what's called AES 256, which is military grade and bank level encryption. What that means in English is in order to break AES 256, a hacker has to replicate a code which is 64 untillion long. That is like, I don't know how many zeros that is. That is a massive digit. Essentially, the fastest supercomputer on the planet right now, it would take somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 years to go through all the possible combinations in order to do that. I'm not saying it can't be hacked, but I'm saying that's the level of encryption we use. Two is everything is stored individually. So my account is stored differently than Bill's, than is Brian's, than is Pam's and other people. So whereas when Target got breached, they punch a hole in the wall and now they're in there to all the data on all the credit cards, right? In ours, there is no one hole they can punch in and access everything. Since everything is individually stored in Microsoft Azure in the cloud, they would have to figure out a code of 64 untillion digits long. And if they do that, they'll access one account. But again, that's why I also recommend you use two-factor authentication on the front end, which further secures your account because no one else is walking around with your cell phone.
And then you're also a zero, is it called zero knowledge?
We're a zero knowledge company. That means no one at our company can see anything that a user has stored inside the platform. The only information we know about you is your name and your email address, so that we can communicate with you, through emails and platform updates and those things. So everything's encrypted at rest. It's encrypted while it's in transport, up or down.
Yeah.
So great question.
That's a great question. I always love it when you get a chance to answer that. I just love hearing about it. And we're 65 minutes into this. But John, do you have time for Q&A?
I do. Let me do this next week. Little teaser.
Yeah.
So next week we have a financial advisor joining us. I think, is that right? Next week, Bill?
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's my financial advisor. I love this guy, Supal Vora. He has changed my life, but more than that, he's probably one of the most grounded spiritual beings I've ever met. He's just super cool, and he's going to join us. And we're going to talk about money, death, life, and the beverages that get us through it.
There you go. And in training next week, what I'm going to talk about, the couple of sections, if you want to jump ahead and get started, please do with your accountability partner. I'm going to talk about the family section, why it's important, how it can help you now, but more importantly, how a lot of people are using it almost like ancestry to build things out, for their families. Because I can tell you this, I can build out my entire family, grandparents, great-grandparents, those kind of things through. I mean, my children weren't even alive to meet, some of their grandparents. So they wouldn't know anything about them or where they lived and everything else. So there's some good family ancestry stuff that can be done. And then we're going to talk about my favorite topic, website logins and our digital identities, and make sure that after I die, none of you can wish me a happy birthday on Facebook.
Always so awkward.
Indeed.
Yeah,
let's
for a great show.
Let's do a few questions, and as always, I have to throw a little teaser there, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I decided this week, Bill, and I've already put it in my Life and Wishes platform in my end of life wishes. So at my funeral, take the bouquet off of my casket, throw it into the crowd so we can see who's next.
done. Making sure that's happening.
Kind of like the wedding thing, right? We're gonna see who's
Exactly.
next.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's open it up for questions, guys. This is super casual conversation. If you have some questions about life, death, beverages that get us through it, or anything you've heard today. I know our attorney isn't on here, so this won't be legal advice or accounting advice, but we're here for you nonetheless. Any questions? Going once. Pam, I saw your hand up earlier. Are you going to ask? Or do we miss the
It wasn't really a question, but it was funny when you guys were talking about finding stuff. My mom's been gone almost 6 years now, but when she was in the hospital, she mentioned something to me about a robe, and she didn't say anything else. I never found out anything else about it. And then a robe, she said something about a robe with money. And she didn't know what it was, or by that time, and then she ended up getting worse, and I never found out. So when I was going through stuff and going through the closet and stuff, I found it. I found the money, and there was $3,000 in there.
In the robe, in her
In
bathrobe.
the robe pocket, in a bathrobe. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So then,
would
of
you have
course, I
ever
wanted to check
looked?
everything then.
Of course, of course.
Wow. And like so many people, if she hadn't have mentioned something about the robe and money, I mean, who would go in? If I were looking in my mother's robe pocket, I'd expect to find some tissues or something.
Tissues, yeah.
You know.
I wouldn't even think about it. I mean, the bathrobe is probably not one of those things you even think, oh, I'm going to give this to somebody or Goodwill. It's just going to go right to the bin, probably. You don't even think about it. Good for her.
Yep.
That's brilliant. First of all, great hiding place. And I'm glad she mentioned it and you found it.
And it was some time later before we started going through stuff, and all of a sudden it clicked. Wait a second, she said something about a robe and money, you know. Yeah, anyway, it was kind of funny.
Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me, the Sorokas are notorious for hiding money every time. Nobody knows anything. They don't talk about death. They barely talk about life. But when somebody dies, there is money hidden everywhere. And my grandmother had it hidden in every single book, like a $20 bill. Her mother, when she died, we went through her house and there was stacks of silver, gold, cash in the weirdest places. I can't even imagine what was lost because we didn't know where to look, because we didn't have somewhere to have that information. It's just amazing.
Well, as we say, some secrets should not be taken to
They
the
should
grave.
not go to the grave. What's the point of having this? What's the point of saving? Everybody I talk to always wants to save or invest to help the generation behind them. They're trying to do something good, but it does no good if they don't know it exists. If it just gets lost in a floorboard or a book safe or whatever it is. Paula, you got a question for us? You're on mute. I can't hear you. Sorry.
I just wanted to thank you for saying books and stuff, because my mom, she used to hide money everywhere. And guess what? She passed away in 15 and it's 23 now. I still have her stuff in storage. So I will be looking for her stuff soon, because we just hurried up and packed up the house because they wanted her, when she passed, everything to be gone. Anyways, they had a certain amount of time that they wanted to close on the house. So we just hurried up and packed everything, and I kept it just in case I want it. But since you said something about books, she was notorious about putting money in books.
Yeah.
So
Books are a great place where people hide money. I was speaking with an estate planning attorney in Georgia about a week ago, and she was telling me they were settling affairs for a family, and the daughter had discovered in the back of a book a $20 bill. And she was talking to her attorney about it and said, you know, I remember that mom always used a $20 bill as a bookmark. For whatever reason, that was her thing. Turns out she never used the same $20 bill. And whenever she finished the book, she left the $20 bill in the back with the mindset, apparently, of if my children or grandchildren read these books to the end, they have a special surprise. And as it turned out, there was tens of thousands of dollars because she had, you know, literally a library of books.
Wow. If I wasn't so inspired to read already, I would be way more inspired to read right now.
Well, this is why you read the last page first, right?
Absolutely. All right. We are, I can't do math right now. 95 minutes in? No, 60, 75 minutes into our session. Let's wrap it up here. John, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, everybody. I hope to see you all again next week. If there's anything I can do for you during the week, you have questions on your account, email me, John, Jon, no H, John at mylifeandwishes.com. Always happy to chat with you. I hope to see you next week and invite others. We have fun.
Yeah, this is clearly not a notary specific call. This is all about life, death, and a little bit about the beverages that get us through it. But next week, we do have a financial advisor, an amazing human being on the call. Plus, we just talked to a funeral director who's going to join us. We have talked to, we have so many other attorneys. This is going to be a fun call to talk about things that you might not be used to talking about. So join us next week. Bring your friends. See you later next Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.